So I'll jump straight into it. First of all, by welcoming the two Johns, I'll refer to them as John R. and John B. to avoid any confusion during the discussions. So the purpose of this discussion is obviously to discuss the positive and negative impact of TLDs such as dotSUCKS. So dotSUCKS is obviously premised on freedom of speech, and starting the conversation with positive and negatives, I'm sure John B. is ready to defend his freedoms, and John R. is prepared to tackle the concerns of the trademark and IP community. So starting off with John B., a two-part question. What made you join and start up the dotSUCKS TLD? And what is the mission of dotSUCKS, and how do you see it working into a trademark owner strategy? I know it's quite a broad question, but if you could start off answering that question.
Sure. Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Daniel. Let me say that I have long been an advocate for free speech. I joined the ACLU the night that candidate George Herbert Walker Bush criticized candidate Michael Dukakis for being a card-carrying member of the ACLU. The next day, I became a member of the ACLU and maintained my membership. I've also been worked with companies who have spent a lot of time trying to ferret out unfair, unfounded criticism from the dark corners of the internet, and it struck me that not only would a dotSUCKS platform be useful to individuals and institutions and others that had a criticism, but also allow companies that are subject to extensive criticism, as I say, in those dark corners, to be able to corral it, collate it, cultivate it, and benefit from it. Criticism is not going away. You can see the business models built on criticisms in places in businesses such as Yelp or Glassdoor. Glassdoor was a bit of an analog for us, if I could use that word in a digital setting. When it launched 8 or 9 years ago as an anonymous source of inside HR information, it was highly criticized by companies. But if you visit Glassdoor now, you'll see that it's become a key part of their recruiting and retention and employment policies portfolio. My belief is that when you combine the free speech aspects, the ability to corral, collate, and cultivate criticism that could lead to increased customer loyalty, and the increasing use of edgy marketing campaigns, that a dotSUCKS platform has many positive and extraordinary uses that I believe, will see emerge over time. It's not going to be born as an adult. It is a year old. We're learning how to walk just now, but the early returns have been very promising. Okay,
and now I hand it over to John R. Regarding dotSUCKS as a trademark attorney. What's your view on it, and what advice do you give your clients when discussing dotSUCKS? And obviously their response, if you can just expand on that, just so we get an idea from a trademark perspective how they are perceiving this particular TLD.
Well, thanks, Daniel, and I appreciate the opportunity of participating also. From a trademark perspective, trademarks are about goodwill and building goodwill in a brand and communicating a message, an important message to consumers and to users of products and services. And so brand owners obviously are going to want to control that as much as they can and to keep themselves focused on building that goodwill. With the advent of dotSUCKS and really the gTLDs in general, there's still a lot of unknown out there, and even as John has just suggested that they weren't born as an adult and they're working through this. And similarly, my clients, trademark holders or brand owners, are trying to understand how all of these are going to roll out as well. I don't think the clients ought to be afraid of having reviews, but there is some concern about how those reviews are going to be set up and what they're going to look like. One of the problems, candidly, with dotSUCKS is that sort of suggests by itself that this is going to be really ugly and really negative. And that, of course, is going to make any brand owner a little bit nervous about where this might be going. So from a brand owner's perspective, they're going to want to control, to the extent that they can, the gripe sites in general, I guess, or at least to be able to keep an eye on them. And so for dotSUCKS, a lot of clients are registering or looking to register their domain names, their trademarks as second-level domain names under dotSUCKS in hopes that they might be able to at least direct a little bit of the future of that. Now, one of the problems that they face is that it seems that a lot of the trademarks are on this premium list, and so it becomes very expensive to register the domain names. And so that's one issue. And then, frankly, the other concern is that even stepping outside of dotSUCKS, there are a lot of ways to develop a gripe site, and it doesn't need to be dotSUCKS. It could be some other gTLD. And so, anyway, so the clients are looking at these from a lot of different perspectives, but overall trying to understand where this landscape is, how this landscape is going to develop, and trying to minimize the damage to goodwill while still providing an opportunity for consumers and others to be able to express themselves and to exercise their free speech rights.
Okay. You talk about control there. I'd like to pass it on to John B. Obviously, brand owners want to control the message. Now, how would they use dotSUCKS in a way that they could maybe promote their particular mark or business in that respect? And then looking at the premium list that John R. spoke about, if you can just talk about more, what is this premium list? And it's obviously quite expensive from a trademark perspective if your domain name is on this premium list. What was the thinking behind that and the pricing structure? So if you just expand on that.
Sure, Daniel, I'd be glad to. Let's begin with the notion of pricing in general. It is our belief, and we will be shown over time to be right or wrong, that there is greater value in the dotSUCKS platform than there is in almost any other new gTLD or even legacy gTLD. It is not our intention to flood the internet with dotSUCKS domain names, but instead to create a platform for building real value. And so if we look at it from the perspective of building real value, and we assess the investment that even a small company makes on an annual basis in customer service, marketing, loyalty, product development, and other kinds of research, it struck us that a suggested retail price of $2,500 for a premium name and $250 for a regular registration was well within the bounds of a price-value ratio. Our belief is that the ability to drive deeper customer loyalty, to create marketing opportunity, and go well beyond the notion of just having another domain name in your portfolio. And so that's our approach. And as I say, over time, we will be determined to be either right or wrong. As for the premium list, we begin with this notion that the names have value. We then say that some names have more value than others, and it's not for us to say what those are. as much as it is for the market to say what it is. So we have got a set of names that we believe, we call them registry premium names, that go well with dotSUCKS. And so on that list are names like life.sucks or death.sucks, where there are also market premium names. And these are names which we researched from a host of different sources, from Fortune lists, from Inc. lists, from People magazine lists. These are names that the market tells us have value. Now, the one point that I do want to make very specifically is that it is in no way tied to the Trademark Clearinghouse because, as you know, we have no access to the names in the Trademark Clearinghouse. And so if there are some of the names on the premium list that are in the Trademark Clearinghouse, it is because we have determined from a host of sources that they are names with value. There are many trademarks, well-known trademarks, that did not make the premium list, that were not put on there. In fact, I'm sure George Lucas and his Industrial Light and Magic people were quite pleased to discover that they weren't on the premium list. So it is not a one-for-one, but merely the product of our research into what we thought the market was saying were premium names, and then what we felt a name when attached to a dotSUCKS would be worth a little bit more than the value that we had put on regular registration. So that's how we approached it.
Okay, and just moving to John R. now, at that price level, so if you're looking at $2,500 per domain name, and some trademark owners have large portfolios, maybe a couple of hundred, couple of thousand marks, do you think it's a worthwhile investment bearing the cost, and then bearing the cost of, filing a UDRP complaint or a URS? And bearing that in mind, would you recommend to your clients to register dotSUCKS based at that price and potential risk?
Generally, my clients so far have been looking at this from a defensive perspective. They haven't got to the point of saying we want to affirmatively step into this arena of creating our own review site. And I'm going to call it a review site rather than a gripe site, because I think a gripe site has a very negative connotation. A review site is more of these are, there may be some gripes in there, but there may be some very positive things as well. And so most clients are still looking at it from a defensive perspective and haven't gone down that path. And so with that in mind, $2,500 is probably a lot to pay, and as you suggested, given the number of trademarks that they have, that becomes a very expensive way to proceed. And again, as I mentioned a minute ago, the other problem is that even if defensively dotSUCKS is locked down and tied up, there are still a lot of other ways to create a site that could be very negative toward a brand. And so they've kind of held off on registering those. Now, over time, they may look at it and say, well, we may want to use this, from a offensive or a positive perspective and create a site. If they do, though, frankly, I'm not sure that they'd use dotSUCKS. They may create their own domain name that has a little bit more of a positive spin to it.
And one thing I'd like to add is, as far as I'm aware, and John B., if you can clarify this, if there is a .sucks domain, say it's google.sucks, and Google wants to file a UDRP complaint to recover this domain, if they are successful and they recover it, they would then obviously, if it's on a premium list, still have to pay the $2,500 each year, even after being successful in the UDRP complaint.
Yes, Daniel, that's correct. I think let me just add another marketplace data point here, is that it was pretty early on that registrars like Mark Monitor indicated that they would only be charging $2,025. So I have no problem with the point that our suggested retail price is $2,500, but but most of the premium names are being registered at levels below that. And a promotional point here, if you were to visit get.sucks, you could test what the cost would be from a number of registrars. I realize I'm probably violating some agreement I have with you guys at Lexsynergy saying that, but it is a rather robust marketplace, and I wouldn't want that point to be missed. The other point is that I agree almost completely with John R. that if a company is going to register in dotSUCKS and just make it that much more shelfware, they're not tapping the value of the platform. Our hope is that brands and institutions and individuals will come to see the value of deploying these names. I believe I'm seeing evidence of the branded consumer company moving in this direction. In the prep for this call with Daniel and John, I mentioned I took great comfort in Taco Bell running a national ad campaign on the subject of sharing sucks with their new handheld food items. I spoke to the ad agency that put that campaign together, and I said, how come you went with sharingsucks.com when you could have gone with sharing.sucks? And the reaction was, well, geez, I didn't really know that it was available, and I had to slap myself. I thought our marketing had been pretty good. But the legitimate marketing world, I believe, and certainly the younger millennial mobile audience that they target, are moving in a direction that in which they are much more comfortable with using the edgier kind of advertising. And my feeling is that a dotSUCKS domain name could be quite useful. I could see a company like Nike or Adidas using running.sucks. I could see companies using campaigns bad breath.sucks or dieting.sucks. I think that there's a future here that we are inching toward, and that will be pretty robust when we get there.
Okay. I think just hanging around the pricing point, the consumer advocate program, I think it's a subsidized program that's in place for the general public. Say I want to set up a site and express my views about a particular business idea or issue I have, though that cost is substantially less. Well, if you can just expand on that program and how that works, just so that we can connect it up to the trademark.
Sure, John B. here again. We are interested in jump-starting as best we can as many legitimate uses of the platform as possible. And so there are individuals who may have a passion that they want to promote, and for those people, we have suggested that they can apply. The requirements for application are laid out on our website. It's a five-question application, and those applications then would be reviewed, and we would, as part of our marketing effort, agree to work together to get them up and running. The other is a program that we would love to work with companies that are already using the word sucks to the left of the dot. There are hundreds of thousands of domain names that use the word sucks to the left of the dot. Some of them, and many of whom we have been speaking to, are contemplating a move. And again, as part of our effort to extend the reach of the registry, we would want to work with those who would want to work with us to move their existing website to a dotSUCKS, sucks to the right of the dot. So those are the two. I don't have any to point to right now, but we have 3 or 4 significant ongoing discussions right now with leading nonprofit advocacy groups that we hope will yield partnerships in the near future.
Okay. And John R., just expanding on that, obviously there's a low cost when it comes to this advocate consumer program compared to the higher cost when it comes to trademark owners whose marks are mostly, I would say, on the premium list. How do you reconcile that, and what's your take on it, from a trademark perspective? I know there was one case some time back where someone tried to sue on the basis that the registry, in a way, was kind of squatting on marks because of maybe a high cost to secure a domain name.
I've never really looked at the legal analysis of the consumer advocacy program versus the premium pricing. From kind of a layman's, almost a cynic's perspective, is kind of it almost looks like this effort is to stir up enough dust or enough dirt to cause brand owners to want to lock down or to register the .SUCKS domain name under premium pricing. And so, like I say, I've never really analyzed whether there might be some kind of a legal claim there, but certainly from a practical perspective, it does at least cause brand owners to think twice about whether they want to spend the money, given that somebody could, at a very low cost, register the .SUCKS domain name with their brand in it.
Daniel, this is John B. If I may, the
yes.
price of the cost of the domain registration may be reduced for a short period of time, but its cost, but it will only be for a short period of time, because we're hoping that these sites would, of course, be able to stand on their own with the renewal prices being at market rate. So I guess my initial thought is I've been called worse, but would certainly be open to having a sidebar conversation with John to perhaps have his response help us strengthen our program.
And saying that in a program that you have involvement with the companies, the consumer, maybe rights protection companies that want a voice, and you helping them out, where would you say you draw the line, and are there any safeguards in place? We're living in a strange time where there's terrorism and there's a lot of hate speech going around. Where would you say dotSUCKS draws the line, especially being a registry and being involved in that process, helping people have a voice?
Well, we specifically carved out three areas that we seek to prohibit. First is we seek to prohibit parked pages. We're not interested in having registrations just serve as platforms for advertising. We also have prohibited cyberbullying, and we have a prohibition in our policies against pornography. We believe that those are important arenas in which to have an expressed point of view. I realize that companies like Facebook and Twitter and others have been dealing with the vexing problem of hate speech. I know, I remember back when Yahoo and eBay had to deal with the auctioning of Nazi memorabilia. I believe that we would be responsive to complaints, as those companies are, in dealing with even in a free speech environment. I guess you still can't yell fire in a crowded theater, eh? And so yes, we would be open to complaints that would come in a crowdsourced way. But from a policies and procedures perspective, the 3 areas of prohibition that we have stated from the very beginning were park pages, cyberbullying, and pornography.
Okay, and in that consumer advocate program, would you monitor the sites regularly? Just
well,
yes,
the way that program
and that
right. I'm sorry. The way that program works, of course, is that a 5-part application gets filed, and we would then review it. If we felt that it was outside our ability to effectively review, we would probably reach out to outside experts before deciding to move forward. But I can assure you that the companies that we are speaking to right now, or the institutions or organizations we're speaking to right now, are all that people on this call would immediately recognize their name and understand them to be legitimate.
Okay. John R., one of the elements in a UDRP complaint where a squatter has squatted on a trademark is, one of the elements is that the respondent shouldn't have a legitimate interest in the name itself. Now, with dotSUCKS being a TLD that promotes freedom of speech, do you think that it would be possible to succeed in a UDRP complaint if, for instance, say someone had to register Google dotSUCKS? I always use Google, it's just, everyone knows that brand, or Facebook dotSUCKS. Many trademark owners that I've spoken to are a bit concerned that they wouldn't be successful in a UDRP complaint because the person could say, well, I do have a legitimate interest in that I'm, exercising my freedom of speech. How would you view that? And I know it's off the cuff, and we don't expect detailed legal advice, but what's your view on that aspect?
Well, it's an interesting argument, and I can see where that would be made. I guess my initial reaction is that they don't, that the squatter in that case doesn't have a legitimate right to the brand, and they may have a legitimate right to express themselves on the site, and maybe even arguably, a domain name might fit into that free speech category. But in terms of the brand itself, I would hope that element would not be deemed to be satisfied because they claim First Amendment rights or free speech rights when the brand is still owned by a brand owner. Now, I don't know if that would win or not, but I think that's kind of how I would pursue it.
And I suppose the content would be relevant in that respect, what content they have associated with the domain, because obviously that would impact your interpretation of the complete set, the domain and the website.
Yes, I think that's right. And so the argument, I think, is not, again, so much that they've got a right to use that brand, but it's that the brand owner doesn't necessarily have the right to squelch their right to free speech. And if that domain name is part of that right to exercise free speech, then I could see where that, where it might come down that way. But again, if you just look at it strictly from the perspective of do they have a legitimate right to the domain name, they may have a right to express themselves, but they don't necessarily have the right to use to take control of somebody else's trademark or to use somebody else's trademark.
Okay. And one of the things that I saw was on one of the dotSUCKS promotional shirts, John B. was, I think it was cancer.sucks. So in a certain generic instance, it can be used to say that, for instance, that disease sucks. What are some of your favorite ones spinning a positive light on dotSUCKS that you could tell us about?
Well, first, Daniel, I think the one you're referring to is psoriasis.sucks. Cancer.sucks
okay.
is not up and running yet.
Okay.
But it does make your point about a disease, a patient group. Some of my favorite ones, thismeeting.sucks, a company in Chicago which sells its services to as a corporate consultant for making meetings run smoother, has created a website, a Facebook page, mobile app, all around the notion of grading over time the attributes of bad and good meetings at thismeeting.sucks. I'm particularly keen on aircanada.sucks. In speaking to the registrant there, the point was made to me that although Air Canada has not spoken to the registrant, that many of the people who have participated on the site have said that they've been contacted by the company and problems have been corrected, so that seems to be moving in the right direction. I'm intrigued by an Australian nonprofit that has registered and launched logging.sucks in its attempt to prevent old growth logging in Australia. The interesting interview with them, when I asked why a long-standing, well-regarded, already successful company, institution, organization would move to a dotSUCKS platform, the response was that we have long-standing support, but in order to be as successful in the future as we are now, we need to reach a younger audience, an audience that hears things and speaks about things differently than many of our longer-standing members do. So that's where the notion, it continued to reinforce the notion that the platform is attractive to that younger millennial mobile audience. There's an assembly bill that has been offered up in California, 1513, and a new site just came up, 1513.sucks, which is kind of interesting. And finally, I'll leave you with what I think should draw a chuckle for most people, a website called theinternet.sucks, which is a rather deep dive into what makes the internet not just a great place, but also a hard place to get to know.
I think I might just register webexaudio.sucks after this webinar with all the issues we had in the beginning. So you may have a customer there.
Motivation comes from every corner.
Yeah, I suppose so. Just in summarizing this WebEx conversation, I know you've spoken a lot, John B., but if you had to say massage a trademark owner's concerns about dotSUCKS, what would you say to them? I know you've exhibited at the Trademark Association meetings. I don't know if you're going to be there this year in Florida, but obviously you had a lot of attorneys coming up to you. What, very simply put, how would you communicate that to them so they know where to position themselves? Because a lot of people that will probably listen to the recording of this are in the trademark field. So, what, in a few words, what would you say to them just to maybe sum up what dotSUCKS, stands for from a trademark perspective?
Certainly, Daniel. Yes, we will be at INTA in Orlando. So I look forward to meeting any and all who want to drop by. With regard to the dotSUCKS platform and intellectual property, trademarks, and brands, the world is moving in this direction. The opportunity presents itself to extend a customer base, to deepen loyalty, to use the dotSUCKS platform as a platform, as a plank in a company's total platform. That's what I would and have been saying to IP lawyers and brand holders.
Okay. And John R., I don't know if you have any closing remarks or any other questions that you may have for John B. on this topic.
Yeah, just one thought. I think the content of the word sucks may change over time, and I completely agree with John B. I think the kind of we're ready for this concept, and it's going to happen. I mean, with or without dotSUCKS, it's going to happen, and reviews and the ability to vent and to express frustrations. All of those things are going to happen. So it's just a question of where and how. And so to the extent that the content of the word sucks may change a little bit, instead of being just 100% negative and ugly, but if it morphs into more of, it may be a strong term, but what it really means is it's a place to go to review a product or a service, and if you want to vent, clearly you can do that as well. But it's not just opening it up and seeing everybody scream at the top of their lungs about how ugly or bad a particular product or service is. And so I guess my point is, if over time that evolves, then I could actually see where dotSUCKS could really be front and center and be well positioned, even for brand owners. Because a lot of the examples, John B., you've given are non-brand cases, and those I think make a lot more sense. But anyway, I think if over time this evolves with John B.'s help and with the market's help into more of a little bit more maybe moderated approach to brands, then I don't know why brand owners wouldn't be more interested in jumping on board and becoming part of this discussion and part of the platform to give their customers and users a platform to be able to express themselves.
I tend to agree there. I think giving trademark owners a platform within dotSUCKS may be more constructive, because you can register an identical matching domain name, say Lexsynergy.sucks, but it doesn't stop someone registering Lexsynergy services.sucks, for instance. So I think a single registration and the cost of it won't prevent these things from cropping up. But if you know how to deal with that and you know how to manage your brand reputation and deal with the criticism, I think that's part of the solution in the process. Because we generally don't advise clients to go, out there, all guns blazing, register every variation in all of the what we call like high-risk TLDs. I include like .XXX and adult and .WTF and those. So rather have a more strategic approach to it and evaluate each case on its own merits. And I think dealing with that constructively, you could, probably resolve a lot more issues than just going ahead and just registering all variations of your particular mark. So with that, I'd like to thank both of you for making the time available for this webinar. I'm not too sure if there are any questions. I don't see any on the panel at the moment, but we have made a recording of this, so you can always pose the questions after the webinar, or if you listen to this recording on our site, you can then contact us, email us, support@lexsynergy.com. So with that, I'd like to thank both Johns for participating in this webinar.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. With that, we'll end this webinar. Thanks for attending.